The phone rang saying, am I speaking to Abdulrazak Gurnah? I say, yes. You have just been awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature. Come on, like that. Of course I was surprised. Can you imagine what kind of writer would say when the phone rings and the guy says, you have just been awarded the Nobel Prize? Oh, about time too. Of course anybody would be surprised. Growing up in Zanzibar was good. Of course, a child has a wholly different understanding of, what matters in the world, and what mattered then was that you could play in the streets, friends, the neighborhood was safe. I started school, and I loved school, and everything seemed really quite safe and all right. You just didn't understand what was going on. As it became clear that there was violence kind of in the background, looming, as it were, then it became less safe, less happy, as it were. And one of the things that decolonization did to Zanzibar was it racialized politics. I was about 13 years old when the revolution happened. And for the rest of my adolescence, it was a period of terror, not necessarily personal terror. I don't mean like that, but I mean, the atmosphere was terrifying. A number of people were killed, of course. A number of people were imprisoned, various people were expelled. People lost their livelihoods, businesses were expropriated, etc. All kinds of authoritarian mismanagement was taking place. But worst of all for a young person is that they closed the schools. So there was nowhere to go after the age of 17 or so for someone like me. And so that was for me the biggest reason for wanting to leave. That I want to do something with my life. I want to fulfill myself. You think you understand about places, but really it's so different, it's so far away in terms of culture, in terms of social proprieties and sanctions and so on, that language, religion, everything was so far away from where we were. It was quite a difficult and shocking sort of introduction to be a stranger, especially if you're poor as well, a poor stranger, and especially if you're 18 years old. There was disregard, there was a certain kind of brazenness about the way people could say abusive things to your face, which I don't think you see so much of nowadays. Partly I think it was because people didn't think there was anything wrong with saying these ugly things to you, to your face. It was all part of how they thought of themselves and how they thought of their world. So I always enjoyed writing and did write, but was never, ever in my mind that it could possibly be a career. There was no role model, as it were, to say, I'm going to be like him or anything like that. So the idea of writing as a career was just not even there on the horizon, as it were. So when I did start to write, it was more reflecting on the situation that I was in, which was being here in England and all the various things. Because writing sometimes, as we all know, I think, helps with this kind of unraveling things or disentangling things. It made the colonial narrative more immediate, being here. There was nothing to contradict it. What I read about our part of the world here was clear. They knew what they were saying about us. And I suppose there was a sense in which I think, no, it's not quite like that. It's not quite as you're putting it. There is another dimension that's not there. So in that respect, it was possibly being here that made it clearer to me how we were seen and induced in me an impulse to say, no, there is another way of looking at this. There is another perspective. There are places where the hostility is at least kind of diminished by a kind of majority sense of we must do what we can. It's mostly, it seems to me, the rich countries that are hostile and defensive and afraid, and it's a surprise, because if you think about the European history, it's only 50 or 60 years ago when refugees were going back and forth across the European continent for one reason or another. I think exile is also a noble word. By which I mean that if you're a refugee, then you're deeply unfortunate. It's not your fault. It's not because you desire it. It's not to do with, ambition or anything like that. It's to do with trying to save your life and possibly your family's lives as well. Of course, there is also a tragic dimension to displacement, being cut off, losing a sense of self, losing your place in the world in a way. So there is a tragic possibility, but if it works, if you're able to, and most displaced people do manage to. That's one of the things I admire about the way people resourcefully, as it were, reshape, reorganize, retrieve something of their lives even after these dislocations and displacements. What someone like me can do, and what everybody else who cares and worries, is to keep pointing out the injustice of what is being done and the inhumanity of it. In other words, to keep saying that more is possible than this. More humane attitudes are possible than this, at a relatively small cost to you as well. And no, indeed, are you thinking or speaking of people who come with nothing. We see endless stories of success by people who've been given the opportunity, not only as footballers, of course, but also as businessmen, as businesswomen, as students who then become doctors. So there are endless examples of how it is that people bring benefit to the society that admits them. Where is your home? Now, we have to understand this question, because home does not refer to where you live necessarily, although it does so, but it doesn't only refer to where you live. It's also where you feel imaginatively comfortable or belong or something like that. So both are true, both are homes, but different in some ways. And I would refuse to be denied either. But you can't embrace both in the same way. And the way Britain might feel to somebody who was born and has lived here all his life, or her life, is probably going to be different from the way I feel about it. Without me wanting to say it doesn't, I don't feel at home. I don't feel divided about it. I feel added on, if you like, rather than divided. And I feel from the point of view of being a writer, as you were, it's actually beneficial to me to be able to both know deeply one place as well as another, live in one practically, live in the other imaginatively. When I want to feel at home, I just describe it.